We all say we believe in freedom of worship in America. It's in our Constitution. We defend it in court. But somewhere along the way, freedom of worship got reduced to freedom to sit quietly for an hour once a week and not bother anybody. For many, worship has become polite, predictable, comfortable, but not necessarily biblical. When we say freedom of worship, we mean Davidic style freedom of worship, the kind of worship Yahweh commanded, David established, and the early believers walked in. So if you visit us, I want you to understand what you're walking into. And why we worship the way we do. We don't find quiet reverence as the primary model of worship in the Bible. In fact, we find the exact opposite. In Scripture, worship looks like hands lifted, voices raised, shouting and clapping, dancing and leaping, weeping and groaning, falling on faces and trembling under His power. This isn't emotional chaos. This is commanded worship. Paul said, "I will therefore that men pray everywhere, lifting up holy hands." The Psalms say, "Oh, clap your hands, all ye people. Shout unto Yahweh with the voice of triumph." Scripture says, "Make a joyful noise unto Yahweh," not a quiet internal thought. A noise? At Femi, that's why you'll see hands lifted everywhere, people clapping and shouting and loud, joyful singing, not because we're that kind of church, but because the Bible is that kind of book. And it's not just our hands and voices. David danced before Yahweh with all his might. Israel praised him in the dance. Scripture talks about leaping for joy and running into the name of Yahweh. So at Femi, you may see people dancing, people running in worship, people leaping for joy, not because someone hyped them up, but because when the Spirit of Yahweh fills a surrendered heart, the body can't always sit still and stare straight ahead. There's also a clear pattern in Scripture. When Yahweh's glory manifests, people cannot stand. The priests in Solomon's temple couldn't east and to minister when the glory filled the house. Isaiah cried, "Woe is me, I am undone." Ezekiel fell on his face. Daniel lost all his strength. John on Patmos fell at Yahshua's feet as dead. When the glory appears, flesh crumbles. So at Femi, you may see people falling under the power of the Spirit, trembling, shaking, or lying prostrate before Yahweh. This is not theatrics. It's the same pattern we see in priests, prophets, and apostles all through the Word. If your assembly never sees anyone overwhelmed by His presence, that's not a sign of greater order. It might be a sign of less glory. The Bible also speaks of the Spirit making intercession through us with groanings that cannot be uttered. It talks about serving Yahweh with many tears. At Femi, you may hear groaning in intercession, travailing prayer, and weeping at the altar. This isn't being too emotional. This is priestly work standing in the gap for souls, for nations, and for families, sowing in tears so we can reap in joy. In the book of Acts, the believers lifted up their voice to Yahweh with one accord, and the place where they were assembled was shaken. Early church worship was loud, corporate, and supernatural. At Femi, we don't come as an audience to watch a worship team. We come as a body to worship together. We lift our hands together. We shout together. We move as the Spirit moves the whole congregation. We're not following a clock. We're following the Spirit. If you're visiting Femi for the first time, we know this may be very new. You might feel uncomfortable at first. We just ask you to be respectful. Observe with an open heart. Check it against Scripture, not tradition. Don't ask, "Is this what I grew up with?" Ask, "Is this in the Bible?" Mitchell despised David for dancing before Yahweh, and she ended up barren. Don't let criticism of biblical worship produce spiritual barrenness in your own life. If the Spirit nudges you, respond. Freedom of worship means freedom to obey the Spirit, not just tradition. We're not interested in dead religion. We are here to encounter the living Yahweh. So if you're tired of dry, lifeless services, hungry for the power of the Spirit, and ready to worship like the Bible actually describes, then we invite you, come as you are, but expect to be changed. Come with your burdens and lay them down in worship. Come with your questions and meet the one who is the answer. If you're hungry for real freedom of worship, come, lift your hands, lift your voice, let your whole being worship Yahweh in spirit and in truth. Come dance with us.